From the job site to the code book, this is a Pool Envy podcast, where licensed pool professionals speak up. Code, compliance, craftsmanship. Hosted by Jason Davies. Licensed across Wisconsin, Florida, and Texas. Your deep end starts now.
This episode is general education. It is not legal advice. Codes vary by jurisdiction. Always follow your manufacturer's instructions and local requirements.
Let's dive in.
I see this a lot. Every pool has the same little artifact by it. That rusty metal box with the yellow circle inside. Sometimes it has an ancient dial. Sometimes it's taped shut. Sometimes it's glued shut. And half the time, weather is protected from the inside of it, usually with an ice cream pail flipped upside down. And that box is a time clock, and it's responsible for more bad pool advice than almost anything I can think of, because it trained people to think that the goal is running their pool pump as few hours as possible, and somehow it'll magically save them money. Today, I'm going to explain why that mindset is outdated, and what modern pumps have changed, and how you really can save money, and why a pump swap is not a handyman job. There's some factors that matter about life and safety, and you should take them seriously, especially on the suction side of things. For a long time, residential pools ran single-speed pumps. One speed, one power draw. It's pretty simple. If you keep things the same, you're going to be able to predict your electric bill. If the pump was on, the electric meter felt it, and the bill that you got also reflected it. Time clocks became the default answer because they didn't make the water better, but they capped and controlled the cost. And that was important because if you have an expensive pool, you need to be able to afford to maintain it. Over time, though, this culture turned into run the minimum hours and call it a day. The habit survived for decades, even though technology has changed. Here's a piece many homeowners have never heard. The U.S. Department of Energy set minimum efficiency standards that reshaped the swimming pool pump market. A key milestone was federal efficiency requirements for dedicated purpose pool pumps, with a major compliance dates starting July 2021, right in the middle of this huge rush on building swimming pools. In plain English, pumps did not randomly change. The rules and the market pushed towards higher efficiency designs. That push is the one big reason variable speed technology has become very common today. So with all these new rules, we had to think about turnover times. In general, the residential world was fine with a 12-hour turnover period, which is basically measuring how much water is going to go through the filtration system every 12 hours. The goal on this is to get 100% of the volume of the water that's in the pool through the filter every 12 hours. And so turnover is really a specific calculation, but it's never a guarantee that you're going to have clean water or safe water. It's just a measure of how much in that period of time is going to get through the filter. And time clocks, they were invented, so run the pump 12 hours and call it done. But we have to be sure that our pool pump and pool system is capable of making that thing happen in that period of time. You can't just hit a turnover number and hope that you won't have dead zones. And you can also just run the right amount of hours and still fight chemistry because filtration and mixing just aren't doing their job properly. And this is why hours-only advice turns into total chaos. This is also why homeowners have a lot of questions about LG and why things are happening. In reality, water needs to be moving, water needs to be sanitized, water needs to be filtered, and everything needs to be balanced together as a system. One of the things that's a big issue with changing out a pool pump, though, are suction hazards. Suction hazards are real. Hair entrapment, limb entrapment, body entrapment. That history drove standards and laws, especially for public swimming pools. Which brings me to the next point, the Virginia Graham Pool and Spa Safety Act. The VGB, what it is and what it applies to and why you should care? Well, it's a federal law focused on public swimming pools and spas. It's built around suction entrapment prevention, drain cover design, testing, configurations, and anti-entrapment protections. For residential pools, the legal enforcement framework is not identical. However, suction hazards don't care if it's a public pool or a private pool. There's a practical point to this. And here's a clean, accurate way to think about it as a homeowner. If you are changing drain covers or touching suction outlets, treat it as a safety-critical component, not a plastic trim piece. Safety matters here more so than anything else in your pool. If your pool has older suction outlets, especially older drain setups where there's just one drain, this is definitely not a place to start guessing. Now, moving on to variable speed pumps. These terms get mashed together in the real world, but they're not the same. With a variable speed pump, you set RPM, or the speed of the motor. In essence, you have some programmable buttons, and you can set some options, and then you can set timers on the pump to jump between those options. You're basically telling the pump in a nutshell, spin at this certain speed. So if you run it slower, you may save some money. Flow changes when the system changes though, such as a dirty filter, or you move a valve, or the heater starts running, or water features open. You're going to be running the same RPMs, but the flow is going to start dropping. So next, manufacturers designed the variable speed and flow pump, which is pretty cool. You set a target flow, commonly in gallons per minute, and the pump is going to automatically adjust the RPM of the pump to keep hitting that flow meter goal. Think of this like adaptive cruise control, and the car in front of you is in the GPM specified. This pump is going to adjust back and forth until it ensures that it's just at the proper gallons per minute. This helps a lot equipment that needs minimum flows, such as heaters or salt systems, and keeping a feature consistent even when the filter loads up. The trade-off with the VSF, it's commonly become a band-aid in the industry. Throw one in and terrible pool care can take over because the RPMs are going to maintain that flow rate. Energy use can climb secretly and quietly higher, and that's not a good thing. So remember this, the variable speed pump is like a gas pedal. You're controlling the speed, and a variable speed and flow pump is like adaptive cruise control. You're setting the gallons per minute, and the pump is going to take care of the gas pedal itself. However, if your system is not properly designed, it can quickly run away and end up costing you in the long run. So why slower often costs less? Well, there's something called the affinity law, but today we're not going to get into physics. Lower RPM just basically means less power draw. The principle made a low speed, longer duration circulation practical, and this is why most modern trends go towards slower and longer. The cost equation works. So here's some things I want to switch into when you're looking at switching out pool pumps.
Today's code breakdown.
Onto the Florida piece that ties directly to licensed matters. This is Florida Building Code Residential, Chapter 45, Private Swimming Pools. It's for residential, not commercial. Florida Building Code Residential R4510.6.3, Water Velocity. Pressure piping must not exceed 10 feet per second. Suction piping must not exceed 8 feet per second. Main suction outlet velocity must comply with ANSI, APSP, ICC 7. Florida Building Code Residential R4501.6.6, for entrapment protection. Entrapment protection for suction outlets must be installed in accordance with ANSI, APSP, ICC 7. That's a lot of code to cover. Here's the basic premise of this. Changing out the pool pump isn't just a basic handyman job. There's a little bit of thought that needs to go into this to help avoid liability in the long term. In a really bad worst case scenario, a too big variable speed pump can ramp up. And in the worst case conditions, that means it can violate some of those rules and put you at risk. A commonly cited design target for swimming pool velocity is around 6 feet per second in suction piping, and around 8 feet per second in the return, or water that's moving back to the pool. This is referenced in ANSI APSP 15 Energy Efficiency Guidance. This is not a homeowner calculation on a napkin. It is a reminder. Pump selection changes maximum flow, and maximum flow affects velocities and risk. Homeowners don't need pump curves to understand this. A pump is not a standalone appliance. It's part of an entire hydraulic system. If you install a pump that can push flow beyond what the suction side safely supports, you create dangerous conditions, and you can be at fault for it. So here's basically what a I followed the standards pump change looks like. Design consideration is going to think about suction outlet configuration, suction pressure, and pressure gauge readings with valves fully open, closed, and all permutations that exist. This helps to ensure that someone going rogue later on cannot goof up the system design today. Drain cover ratings and conditions, whether the worst case flow or velocity can exceed what the system is designed to handle, and whether suction outlet protections align with entrapment protection standards referenced by applicable code. This is exactly where licensed qualified evaluations matter. When in doubt, it is okay to stop and ask a licensed engineer to step in and do the calculations for you. Homeowners who value safety will understand. Lastly, for any of the pool pros out there stuck in these scenarios, when you're being pushed to just do a quick repair, it's okay to step away. Bending the result one time can result in expensive surprises later on in your career. Now, for a quick separator, Florida regulates public swimming pools under a different framework, including approvals and permitting requirements. Public pools often involve permitting, plan review, and in many cases, signed and sealed plans dependent on the scope and local rules. If it's in public, treat it like it's public. Higher stakes, much higher accountability. Here's a real-world scenario. Are you buying a new home, selling a home? You have a realtor pushing to get something ready to sell? A quick replaster to make the pool look new perhaps a vinyl liner replacement. When a drain cover comes off, that becomes the perfect time for a safety reset. Drain covers are flow-rated safety components. They are not forever parts. Reinstalling an old, unknown, mismatched, or expired cover is not getting it done. It's creating a future problem. And here is the real estate angle stated very carefully. If someone rushes cosmetic pool work and ignores safety components, the next owner may discover it, and that can turn into an expensive dispute. Insurance questions can also get complicated. For your exact situation, talk to an insurer or an attorney. This episode is about prevention. So if you remember nothing else, remember this. If you are not changing the pump, stop using superstition hours and save that for Stevie Wonder. Remember, your pool needs a 12-hour turnover time on residential. Make sure you can hit that. And then test, track, and adjust for outcomes, not what your friends on Facebook said. It's your pool, your rules. Now, if you are changing the pump, treat this as a time to hunker down and look at what's going on. Confirm that the suction side cannot be pushed into unsafe ranges at full output. Confirm suction outlet covers are correct, properly rated, properly installed, and in good condition. If you're a friend of mine in Florida, remember that the residential code directly addresses suction and pressure velocities and reference entrapment protections via ANSI, APSP, ICC7. Be sure to obtain a permit for your pool pump replacement. NEC 680.13 requires a readily accessible disconnect not more than 50 feet away from the pool pump and at least 5 feet horizontally from the pool's inside wall. A GFCI is now required, NEC 680.21c, in states where the 2020 code was adopted, for example in Florida. And over in Texas, just so you guys are aware of this, the adoption of the NEC 2023 requires special attention to NEC 680.5, as there are new requirements for GFCI and SP or special purpose GFCIs, and the voltages go much higher than the standard 240 volt systems. Be sure that you talk to a qualified individual and or licensed professional about that before moving ahead. If you are uncertain, get a qualified evaluation. A pool is a hydraulic system and a chemistry system living together. A pump schedule is not a simple vibe. It's a system setting. Seriously, stop asking how many hours. Start asking, what flow does my system need to get the proper turnover? What does my suction side safety support in gallons per minute? And does this pump choice match the plumbing and suction outlets? Doing things the right way begins with a real assessment. However, if you want to help the industry out, let's keep it focused on education and standards, and know those pump curves and ensure that your pump is properly sized for your pool. That's all I have for you. We'll see you in the next episode. Licenses: Florida CPC 1460695, Wisconsin Electrical and HVAC 1543940, Texas TICL 1350, Rail 635643.
Thanks for listening to the Pool Envy Podcast, where licensed pool professionals speak up. Hosted by Jason Davies, licensed across Wisconsin, Florida, and Texas. For more insights, subscribe and join us next time.